Welcome to your Creative Leadership Seminar. Unlock your creative potential and tap into your creative leadership capacity. This seminar will help you do 3 amazing things to better your creative leadership. Grow your creative confidence, find your spark, and use design thinking. Let's get started. During this video seminar, your screen will occasionally go dark, and an on-screen prompt like this will ask you to pause your video. Brief on-screen instructions will ask you to complete work in your seminar workbook. You can download a copy of this workbook on our course site or at the Greg Learning Facebook store. Before we get started, note page numbers are provided on slide to help you follow along in your seminar workbook. We are all creative, and creative leaders influence their world in far more meaningful and powerful ways. Most people are vastly more creative and capable than they know. This seminar is designed to help you unlock your creative potential and tap into your creative capacity to enhance your natural ability to influence and realize great things. Our Creative Leadership Seminar is designed to provide you simple and beneficial learning. The experience is arranged to help you learn, do, and explore. Your seminar workbook is organized in these 3 areas: learn, useful information to help you acquire knowledge and gain insight; do, try out what you've learned with an activity individually or in a group; explore, resources for you to go deeper and discover more. Creative leaders influence their world in far more meaningful ways. That's why it's important to build your creative confidence. Folks feel like being creative is a fixed trait, like having blue eyes. You're either born with it or you're not. That's a myth. That's where building your creative confidence comes in. Creative confidence means that you have the courage to take creative risks, the willingness to fail, learn from your mistakes, and the knowledge that all ideas you have create value. If we agree that we're all creative, then we have to understand we all can develop creative leadership. We have far more creative potential waiting to be tapped. Leaders can nurture their creativity and put it into valuable use in their influence. Yet only 32% of leaders feel that they're living up to their creative potential. We just need to help leaders rediscover what they already have, the capacity to imagine or build on new-to-the-world ideas. Remember kindergarten? Seemingly uninhibited, creativity-filled classrooms full of colorful objects, new experiences, and endless possibilities. For most of us, that endless supply of creativity faded over time, until we no longer see ourselves as creative. So let's do our first activity. In this activity, you'll draw pictures to share who you are. The pictures will be used to help you introduce yourself to a group. When you've completed your drawings, you can find a partner, and your partner can take a look at those drawings and tell you what they see, attempting to introduce you through the pictures you drew. Here's your directions. Draw 3 pictures to share who you are in the space provided in your workbook. No words, just pictures. The pictures you draw should introduce you, highlight what you want to share about yourself. Then, as you complete these pictures, think about who you can share them with and how you might have them introduce you through the pictures you've drawn. Have a conversation about your creative drawings, yourself, and what you're trying to express. Don't worry, just do it. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. I know it might be a little tricky sitting at your computer to do an activity that's designed to introduce you to a group of people. However, I want you to use those pictures that you drew to introduce yourself in some situation down the road. I think it's an important experience. But here are the 3 pictures I drew about me. Take a minute to try to figure out what I was trying to communicate. Drawing pictures actively engages the creative right side of your brain. Research shows that the best learning happens when both sides of your brain are engaged, and that's important in building your creative confidence. I hope by now you're convinced that creativity is important. But you might be wondering, how do I find creative leadership within me? Well, to help you find the answer to that question, let's try this activity. Here's a couple of directions. First, use the 9-dot box in your seminar workbook to do this activity. Your job is to draw 4 straight lines through all of the dots without lifting your pen. Get creative. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. So here's the answer. Most people stay within the lines. Remember coloring as a kid? It seemed like the goal was always to keep those vivid Crayola colors in the lines in the coloring book page. This problem can only be solved if you're willing to draw lines outside the box. Most people are not willing to do that, but to build your creative confidence, you have to challenge boundaries and be willing to color outside the lines. To gain this creative confidence, you have to face your fears. The fact is, the majority of us fear failure. We fear being judged. We fear getting started, and we fear the unknown. Fear hinders creativity. The good news is, we can overcome our fears related to creative endeavors to better our creative confidence. Use the process of guided mastery to overcome your fears. That is, take small steps towards overcoming your creative fears. A small step is simply an action that feels attainable to you in the near future. A series of small successes will help you gain courage and overcome creative phobias. What would be nearly impossible to accomplish in one giant leap becomes manageable in small steps. Failure sucks, but instructs. It's one of my favorite quotes from the D School at Stanford. Give yourself the leeway to make mistakes. Give yourself permission to fail. The lessons that are learned from failures make us stronger and smarter. So let's deal with your fears in an activity. When it comes to creativity in your work and life, what are your fears? In this activity, you will name your fears and identify small steps, guided mastery, that you can begin to overcome those fears and unlock your creative potential. Here's some directions. First, in the space provided in your seminar workbook, identify 3 specific fears you have when it comes to being creative. Identify one small step you can take now to overcome that fear. And then, finally, challenge yourself to identify 2 more small steps you can take to dealing with that fear. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. Fear is the single biggest obstacle people face in creative leadership. Creative confidence asks us that we overcome that fear. Here's a quick activity to warm up your creativity. The goal is to push you to test your creativity by turning circles into recognizable objects in a short period of time. Here's your directions. First, use the 30 circles in your workbook and something to draw with. Turn as many of those blank circles as possible into recognizable objects in 3 minutes. Time yourself. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. 30 Circles offers a quick lesson in creativity and ideation. When you generate ideas, you're balancing 2 goals: fluency, which is the speed and quantity of ideas, and flexibility, the ideas that are truly different and distinct. When you combine fluency and flexibility, you can generate a rich array of concepts to choose from. It's easier to have great creative ideas if there are many to choose from, but if you have a lot of ideas that are just variations on a theme, you might really only have one idea that has a bunch of versions. So consider these questions on screen as you look at your 30 Circles experience. And as you're thinking, here are 5 of my 30 circle drawings. Find your spark. Your spark is a metaphor for your sweet spot, the things you're great at. Your creative potential rests in what you naturally do best. Your creative spark can be found in the strengths that define your talents. Creativity depends on what you believe you can do with the talents you already have. All people have a unique combination of talents, knowledge, and skills, their strengths. It's what they use in their daily lives to do their work, achieve their goals, and interact with others. When people understand and apply their strengths, the effect on their lives and work is transformational. People who use their strengths every day are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their work and 3 times more likely to say they have an excellent quality of life. To know your leadership, you need to know your strengths. In fact, creative leaders who perform at high levels spend most of their times in areas of strength, not fixing weaknesses. They've learned to delegate or partner with others to tackle areas that are not in their strengths. They use their strengths to overcome challenges, and they find ways to capitalize on their strengths in new situations. So, what are your strengths? Let's find out using this activity. Complete the online Strength Finder assessment provided to you, or visit strengthsfinder.com to do so on your own. And then record your top 5 strength themes in the space provided in your workbook. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. Now, let's name your strengths. With your top 5 strengths identified through the Strength Finder assessment, it's time to make them your own. In this activity, define each of your top 5 strengths in your own words. Here's some directions. Grab a highlighter, a pen, and your signature themes report generated from your Strength Finder assessment. Highlight the words or phrases that resonate with you in your report. You'll know you're highlighting the right thing when you say to yourself, "Yep, that's me." And then, in your own words in the space provided, define your strengths. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. So let's continue your strengths development by thinking a little bit more about your creativity. Your strengths are your spark, the things you're good at. Your creative potential rests in what you naturally do best, defined by your strengths. Now that you know and understand your strengths as your own, let's consider your strengths as they shape you as a creative leader. Here's some directions. First, record your top 5 strengths in the space provided in your workbook. Then, describe how each of those strengths benefits your creativity. Press pause now to complete this activity in your seminar workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. Thinking of ways to develop your creativity alone is not enough. Strengths are one part of what makes us better in our creativity. An investment in practice is an important part of the equation. That is, talent is your natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. If we multiply that by investment, the time spent practicing, developing your skills, and building a better knowledge base, that's where we find strength, which is the ability to consistently provide near-perfect performance. In this case, providing even better creativity in our leadership. Now, let's move on to an important part of our seminar, design thinking. It's a mindset, almost a way of life. Design thinking starts with people and their needs. It opens you as a leader up to new directions and perspectives, and the more you exercise the design thinking muscle, the better you get at it. Each time you engage with the process, you end up feeling more capable, more creative in your leadership. From time to time through the rest of the seminar, I'm going to give you some tips. Here's your first tip. Give yourself permission to step outside of your comfort zone. For some, this can feel strange or messy, but just dive in and stick to it. It's a first and critically important part of the design thinking process. And also, don't put pressure on yourself. This experience isn't about trying to come up with a perfect idea in a few minutes. It's about learning a process and practicing that process of design thinking. And finally, for now, frame your problems as questions. Use the "how might we" statement as optimistic invitations to explore more. These are 3 important little words. The how is solutions-oriented, the might encourages optimism, and the we is collaborative. So now for an activity, your design thinking project. You have a problem at work, and for this seminar, we're going to use it to explore the design thinking process. Your leadership team has asked you to solve this problem. You've been given the freedom to improve the problem with new and creative ideas. So here's your direction. Read the problem statement in your seminar workbook and identify how this problem interests you. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. Here's the problem statement that we're going to use as we explore design thinking. In the activities ahead, you'll go through the phases of design thinking and come up with new ideas as solutions to this problem. How might we make the weekly work meeting something everyone looks forward to? When run effectively, Meetings spark collaboration and fuel conversation, but too often they cause dread or apathy. They take you away from your work and prompt you to stress about things that you shouldn't be doing instead. If meetings were engaging, interactive, and playful, what would that look like? Could you design a meeting where everyone looked forward to attending? This problem will act as our common thread in our activities ahead. But first, let's take a look at these 3 I's of design thinking. I teach design thinking in 3 main phases, what I call the 3 I's of innovation. First, inspiration. Inspire new thinking by discovering what people really need. Then, ideation. Push past obvious solutions to come up with breakthrough ideas and make those ideas tangible. And third and finally, implementation. Craft a human story that inspires others towards action. Let's explore each of these steps in a bit more detail and practice along the way. Let's start out with what might be the most important activity in your entire seminar experience, your design thinking map. For the rest of the seminar, you'll explore each phase of the design thinking process to creatively solve the problem that we stated earlier. So here's a couple of directions. Complete your design thinking activities, and then jot down a summary of your experiences in the design thinking map on page 18 of your workbook. Press pause now to take a look at page 18 in your design thinking map. When you're finished, press play to continue with the seminar. So here's your design thinking map. Each step builds on the previous one, so you'll need to complete this experience in order. By the end of these activities, you'll have a snapshot of your design thinking journey and the tools to use when tackling problems in the future. As you complete activities, summarize your experience in the design thinking map on page 18 of your workbook. Design thinking begins with empathy, understanding the needs of who you're designing for. Observing people's natural behaviors helps you discover their unmet needs. Sometimes you can't just ask people what they need. You need to listen with your eyes and emphasize. So we're going to take a minute to get curious about real people, spark fresh thinking on how we can make their world better. Here's 6 things we're going to consider when observing others. 1. Look for things that prompt behavior. 2. Look for adaptations. 3. Look for what people care about. 4. Look for body language. 5. Look for patterns. And 6. Look for the unexpected. Let's talk about each in a little more detail. So first, we're going to look for things that prompt behavior. Some behavior triggers are obvious, like signs that tell us where to go. Others are more subtle, like a line printed on a train platform to warn passengers to stand away from the edge. Number 2, look for adaptations. Adaptations are hacks or workarounds that people come up with to make something work better for themselves. What does the adaptation tell you about their needs? Number 3, look for what people care about. You can tell a lot about someone from the stories they tell and the things they surround themselves with. When you know what people care about, you immediately learn what they value. 4, look for body language. People smile when they're delighted and slouch when they're tired or detached. Interpreting people's nonverbal language is an easy guide to gauge their needs and better understand what they need. Number 5, look for patterns. Pay attention when people repeat something. You might uncover themes or routines, both of which can point to underlying needs or values. Then we can follow up with why. And finally, number 6, look for the unexpected. Things that are hidden or stand out in surprising ways often invite you to explore a deeper story. Be curious about what stands out and what remains hidden. Observations is one of the best ways to start gathering inspiration. It can reveal what people really need. Here's a tip. Get curious about why. Pay attention to what people are doing and the choices they're making. These things will tell you what really matters to someone. Then get curious about why they're doing it, which often reveals an unmet need. And here's another tip. There's no right or wrong. Don't worry about identifying the right need. People have many needs, some obvious, others hidden. Ask yourself, do I feel something for this person that inspires me to do something? You're on the right track if you're starting to empathize. For this activity, we've talked to 3 people about their weekly meeting experience. No surprises here, they weren't entirely thrilled with the current state of affairs. Below you'll find 3 pictures and statements individuals made about their meeting experience. Follow these directions to observe for inspiration. First, for each photo, get curious about the person's needs and motivation. Take a look at the photo and the statement they make. Then, select one photo to dig deeper and make some observations, beginning with your empathy. Answer the observation questions for the photo you choose. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. So let's take a look at what our 3 friends said. First, John says meetings are run by the same few people each week, and we cover the same topics. To me, at least, meetings are a giant time suck. And then Kara says, our team meetings go too long. My trick to surviving is to bring snacks or other distractions. And then finally, our friend Jose says, being new to this organization, I don't always know what's going on or who's who. I'd love to use this time to get to know my team better. So here are some reflection questions to help you observe. First, what's one thing you observe? Don't interpret, just describe what you see. Then number 2, why might this be happening? Here's where you interpret. Think in terms of motivations and unmet needs. And finally, this inspires me to think about solutions that think in terms of ideas that could meet needs you observe. And now here's a couple of ways that you can further explore this topic. It's for practice. As an individual, practice staying curious as you commute to work today. Keep an eye out for unmet needs by looking for patterns or the unexpected. Jot down a few things that inspire you when you arrive. And with your team, tune into the nuances of how people work on your team. Observe how the environment, the space, tools, etc. impact collaboration. Focus on what people care about and how their body language reflects their energy level and level of commitment. Ideation consists of 2 distinct but interrelated parts. First, generating ideas, and second, making those ideas tangible. For ideation, practice divergent thinking. Going broad to consider many solutions, even wild ones. It's our goal here to stretch beyond the obvious. Odd and unexpected things help spark new ways of thinking. Coming up with lots of ideas helps you consider many solutions to a problem. This is divergent thinking. Too often, teams will stop at the first good idea. Getting to truly innovative ideas means pushing past the obvious. So here's a couple of divergent thinking tips. Go wild for ideas. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of difference between the ridiculous and the brilliant. Push yourself to imagine beyond what's comfortable or familiar. And then secondly, don't judge your thinking. We often limit our thinking by judging ourselves and worrying about what others think. But when you resist those urges, you'll be amazed at how much more creative you feel. One of the best ways to practice divergent thinking is the mashup. There are 4 simple steps. First, pick 2 broad, unrelated categories. For each category, generate a list of responses. Randomly combine those items from the 2 lists to develop possible ideas for products and services. Describe your ideas and communicate their value in ways that are relevant to your problem. It helps bring odd or unexpected things together to spark fresh ideas. So here's your directions. First, in 2 minutes, generate as many possible responses as you can to the 2 lists below. They're provided in your seminar workbook. Start with one category, then complete the other. It doesn't matter which you do first. Just make sure that you add some responses to both. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. Still on page 24, let's continue the mashup. Here's some more directions. Pass your workbook to a partner or share your thoughts with someone you interact with on a regular basis. Have them create 3 random connections, pairing one item from each category. If you're not with someone right now, just do it yourself, but make sure your pairings are random. For each combination, then, you should come up with a new idea inspired by the mashup. Briefly describe your idea and value it relates to the problem. If you're stuck, think back to the inspiration you gathered. What unmet need did you observe? Try to come up with ideas that address that. In a few short words, jot your thoughts down on your design thinking map back on page 18 when you're complete. Press pause now to complete this activity in your workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue with the seminar. So here's one key tip as you're thinking about the mashup. After completing the activity, you might be wondering, is there room for this type of play at work? How could I justify using this activity with my team? Play is the key to innovation. Bringing play to work means creating space for the team to discover, fail, and try new ideas. Play can actually spark shifts in mindset that can lead to creative solutions that answers today's complex challenges. And now a couple of tips for practice. First, as an individual, resist the urge to jump in on the first viable idea this week. Be bold. Push yourself to generate at least 5 more ideas. Sometimes it can hurt a little, but it gets easier over time. This is good practice to get you to more innovative solutions. And then with your team. Design in quick spurts with your team to generate lots of possible solutions. Maybe you facilitate a brainstorm or try the mashup to encourage collaboration and divergent thinking. In these sessions, go for quantity. This means deferring judgment and welcoming bold, even ridiculous ideas. So you've just generated ideas. Now you'll make your ideas tangible. One of the best ways to make a creative idea more tangible is to prototype. Prototypes help you learn from failure early and inexpensively and invite others to react to your idea. Prototyping allows us to get feedback from other people, and that's great. Think of your prototype as a prop that invites others to experience your idea and helps you transform an abstract concept into a meaningful product or service. Sketching is a fundamental skill of prototyping and one of the many ways you can make your ideas tangible. It's a great way to communicate your idea to yourself and someone else. So here's a couple of tips. Picking up the pen is half the battle. Don't worry about quality. Have some fun with it. At first, you're only drawing for yourself. And include people in your sketches. We often see people sketching their ideas and how it looks and works, but it's important to visualize how others will interact with your product or service. That nuance will help you consider your idea from a more human-centered or empathetic lens. So now let's sketch it. Sketching is one of the many ways you can make your ideas tangible. The problem is, people think they're either good at sketching or not. In reality, it's like any skill, it improves with practice. So here's some directions. First, pick one mashup description from our previous activity. Then sketch your ideas in the 2 ways directed in the space provided to you in your workbook. Press pause now to complete this activity in your seminar workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue the seminar. Before we go on, here's a tip. Make ideas tangible with iterations. Making ideas tangible doesn't just stop with a sketch or 2. It's often the longest step in design thinking. You test out many variations, learn from people, refine prototypes, and then test it again. It's an iterative process. So explore making ideas tangible with a couple of things. First, as an individual, practice getting your hands dirty this week. Create early, rough representations of your ideas and get them in front of others for feedback. Don't sell your idea or defend it. Ask open questions to help you learn how to improve it. And with your team, think about holding a prototyping session. Provide a challenge and ask everyone to build something in 30 minutes. Use whatever materials you have, papers, pens, pipe cleaners, chalkboard, whatever it is. This process will create momentum for your team and help you quickly learn what does and doesn't work. Now it's time to share the story with others. Storytelling helps inspires others towards actions and helps them connect with your ideas. Here are a few suggestions to help elevate your storytelling. Make it personal, get emotional, use anecdote and reflection, and include a call to action. Let's dig a little deeper. Personal stories resonate with us and move us as human beings. And there's just something sticky about character-driven narrative. Painting a word picture of a real person with real issues or real successes is much more powerful than information alone. A lot of people will tell you otherwise, but vulnerability is okay, so get a little emotional. Bring your full self into your story. You don't need to get melodramatic, but be real. Bring enthusiasm, energy, and empathy. Use anecdote and reflection. The stories that grab us the most have two basic components in varied combinations: anecdote and reflection. This happened, then that happened, that's anecdote. This simple sequencing carries people through your story. Reflection, then, is where you help your audience make sense of what they've just heard. You want your audience to feel what you've described. Remind them why your story matters. I'm telling you this story because... Finally, consider including a call to action. People too often get caught up in the presentation they're making. They forget what they're trying to achieve. Always have an ask at the end. What do you want people to do after hearing your story? Don't leave this open to interpretation. Spell it out for your audience. Here's a couple of tips. Talk your story out. If you get stuck, ask yourself, what's my story really about? Then answer yourself by talking naturally. Don't worry about capturing what you're saying in writing. You'll be amazed what comes when you just let yourself talk. You can always record your answers to help you remember. And consider your audience. Not every story will resonate with everyone. People are complex, so are their needs. When I see a story fall flat, it's often because the tone, message, or emotional hook wasn't the right one for a specific audience. Imagine you're presenting a 90-second pitch for a panel of judges. Consider the factors you'd need to keep the audience in mind. In this activity, choose one of your idea sketches and describe why the idea matters to people. Remember our problem statement. How might we make the weekly work meeting something everyone looks forward to? Now, describe why your idea matters to the people with a story. Here's some directions. First, select one of your idea sketches and summarize the sketch in the space provided in your workbook. Then, pick one of the storytelling suggestions you've learned. Write your story using the guidance provided in your seminar workbook. Using your notes, practice your story on a small group or with a friend over the course of time. Press pause now to complete this activity in your seminar workbook. When you're finished, press play to continue. Let's close this section with a storytelling tip. Share your story early and often. In leadership, we tell stories to inspire momentum in others. As with prototyping, it's important to share early and often. That way, you can see how your story is received and refine it accordingly. Reception is everything here. With every share, you can tighten your story and make it more human-centered. That's the goal, to invite others to feel, empathize, and be moved. Here's a couple of ideas to help you practice and explore the topic of storytelling more. First, as an individual, next time you have a good idea for an impact story, share it with a colleague. Kick the tires, test it out. It might be a little uncomfortable, but it'll help you improve. And as a team, think about hosting a storytelling session. This will help your team unpack the idea and the 4 suggestions in this seminar in a way where you can give each other great feedback. Learning the skills of design thinking is like learning a musical instrument. It takes practice. You now understand the basics of design thinking, but it's through ongoing practice that you gain mastery and true creative confidence. Look for moments when you can apply these skills that you've learned here in our seminar today in your current work. The key is to keep doing it and adapting it to your context.